With Bitcoin is staying around the same price, not doing a whole lot, slowly bleeding, altcoins are continuing to bleed against Bitcoin. It's looking grim in the markets, but we have some exciting news coming out of the Coinbase ecosystem. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being thrown into acquisitions. And we need to talk about this because base coins are actually doing a little bit better than some other altcoins. So today we're going to be taking a look at some of these base plays that I'm monitoring. You better believe that base, in my opinion, is going to have a run of itself, and we're going to take a look at some of these acquisitions. So if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and let's talk about base. So first and foremost, before we get into the base ecosystem and what's new, I wanted to just give you guys a brief overview of where we are in the markets, because even though every day goes by slowly, there's not a whole lot happening. We need to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture for Bitcoin is that we are still respecting this 50-week moving average. We have not fallen below it, and every time we've come close to it, it has bounced from these levels. There's been 3 distinct times that we've, approached it, even wicked below it, and it has maintained, and it has basically made us continue this bull market. And we are seeing that this 50-week moving average right now is around 102,500. So we aren't touching it just yet, but perhaps in the next few days or weeks, we touch it and then bounce from there. But again, I wanted to show you this because ultimately speaking, this is going to have an impact on altcoins. If Bitcoin starts falling down even more, doesn't bounce on the 50-week moving average, well, you can understand that crypto is likely going to go a bit lower. Now, on top of that, if you take a look at what everybody else is talking about gold, if you look at what has happened to gold over the day today, well, we actually had a pretty big drop in gold after the all-time high of roughly 4,370. And during that time, if we go to a 4-hour chart, you can actually see that, gold was falling quite heavily and Bitcoin was pumping. A lot of people are saying that, liquidity from gold rotates into Bitcoin at what point in time. History does show that, but I just wanted to highlight that, we have Bitcoin falling right now and we also have gold falling right now. Sometimes people just need a narrative to buy an asset. But again, still in a bull market for Bitcoin. And now let's take a look at your base blockchain, because I do think there's going to be a massive run for base, especially if we get an altcoin season, which I still believe we are going to get that sometime in the next few weeks to months to come. So base is still, very new to the whole crypto game, and we haven't seen base blockchain have its own bull market. And if we take a look at the TVL right now, even though, you're seeing altcoins bleed against Bitcoin, we're still seeing a decent amount of TVL in the base blockchain. We're sitting above 5 billion, which is just behind Solana and BSC. So, of course, there is a lot of action on the base blockchain despite the current market conditions. And on top of that, what has happened over the last 24 to 48 hours has been very exciting in the crypto space. Let me fill you in as to what happened at Coinbase over the last few days. First and foremost, I highly recommend you guys go and follow Brian Armstrong. You can even turn on post notification. Every time he posts, you're going to get a notification, because oftentimes there are either memes created from what he posts, or secondly, he is talking about a project that not too many people know about, and then the price pumps like crazy. We're going to show you guys a few examples of this. Of course, it's very fast, it's risky, so don't invest money that you can't afford to lose, but that is crypto. And crypto is risky, and you should follow that model through and through. So follow Brian Armstrong. But what we had over the last day was actually some massive, PR stunt by Coinbase. They purchased one NFT worth $25 million. Yes, I said that with an M, $25 million. That basically forces 2 legends, which were very prominent in the 2020-21 bull cycle, where they had their own podcast. I'm talking about Cubby as well as Ledger here. They had a podcast that became very famous. They had guests appear on these podcasts, and it was a whole massive movement that got a lot of people into crypto. And that was, the big thing in the content creation space back in that bull market. And this NFT was basically the token that was needed for this podcast to come back. So Coinbase purchased that NFT for $25 million, then burnt it. That was basically the conditions for that podcast to come back to life. And that is exactly what happened. Now, as this was happening, there was a massive amount of hype in crypto because that is, nostalgic. This is a podcast that hasn't ran in over a year and a half, even 2 years. And with the ridiculous price tag of $25 million to purchase it and then to burn it, so essentially donating $25 to them, well, nobody in their right mind was going to do that, but Coinbase decided to do it. Initially, a lot of people were wondering what is happening. There was actually a meme that was created right after this was announced by Brian Armstrong that they actually did purchase the NFT. The podcast name was called Up Only, so of course the name of the meme was Up Only. It's down quite bad, but that is one of the examples that I wanted to show you because this was, reconfirmed by Brian Armstrong that they bought the NFT. Someone decided to make a meme. It ran from literally 0 all the way to 10 million. We called it out in our Discord around 3.3 million or so. So if you got in at that point, you could have made a 3x, of course, assuming you sold at the very top here. These plays are usually very quick pump and dumps. That's why I say you shouldn't invest money that you can't afford to lose. But again, it goes to show that there is a lot of money that wants to come into these different plays. There was about $6 to $10 million of volume coming into this play as this was all happening live on chain. So at that point, very interesting because Coinbase decided to buy that NFT for $25 million, still a whole lot of money. So I do think that that signals one thing, that Coinbase is very bullish on creator content, because who else in their right mind would pay $25 million for an NFT to kick back up a podcast and essentially pay for 8 episodes of a podcast that is going to happen within the next months? So that got me thinking, of course, there is a massive creator coin economy out there right now on Zora. If you go onto Zora, you can easily find the top coins. We have Propaganda, Docker, so on and so forth. I do find that most of these coins are holding up quite well, but yes, you're going to notice that all of these are very low in market cap, all sub 10 million. So again, you're looking at a much riskier play than other altcoins. But again, these coins are surprisingly holding up despite the markets not doing too well. So again, it kind of shows that there is a lot of momentum in the creator coin ecosystem. And that was basically re-emphasized yesterday with Brian Armstrong and Coinbase buying that NFT to publish, 8 new episodes of that podcast. So that was the first thing that happened. Now, the second thing, and the thing that actually makes more sense as to why they purchased that NFT, is because they went ahead and purchased or acquired Echo.xyz, which is an on-chain fundraising platform that was actually founded by Cubby. So it makes total sense here. They kind of just did, a PR stunt with the NFT, 25 mil, and then they purchased what Cubby built over the last few years for $375 million. So this is a whole lot of money that they just spent to acquire Echo.xyz. And like I said, this is a fundraising platform that Brian Armstrong is planning to use eventually through Coinbase, allowing its users to participate in fundraising of different projects depending on someone's needs and wants. Because as we all know right now, the traditional way of investing or, being early in projects, especially in the TradFi world, you have to be an accredited investor. And, me or you can't get into these different launches. Of course, they're trying to protect some of the consumers out there because people have to be accredited investors, have to have a certain amount of capital to invest in startups. But ultimately speaking, eventually Coinbase is going to have Echo to allow normal people, retailers, to invest in startups on chain, and that's going to be very interesting. So that was the whole, last 24, 48 hours on a Coinbase. And I do think it goes again a little bit deeper to this. If we take a look at this tweet here, there is now a whole on-chain operating system for Coinbase. And if you take a look at all of these different puzzle pieces that they're putting together, and they're really trying to be the one-stop shop for crypto, we can have here a new project, whether or not it's a Web 2 project or a Web 3 project. You can launch everything through Coinbase, and the name Coinbase actually goes pretty far. So we actually have Coinbase that acquired LiquidFi Finance, which is a platform to launch and manage tokens. So that is, one of the ways that projects can use this service in order to launch and have their right tokenomics vesting schedule, so on and so forth. That was acquired by Coinbase in July of 2025. Now, just yesterday, they got Echo.xyz, which is the fundraising aspect of it. So you have, a way for projects to start, you have a way for projects to raise money, and then you have ways for projects to actually launch, and that's going to be on the Base blockchain. And lastly, you have Coinbase to distribute this to hundreds of millions of users, because as we all know, Coinbase has that amount of users, and that is one ecosystem that is basically massive if all the pieces come together appropriately. So I wanted to give you guys some of that, knowledge, just so you understand what's happening at Coinbase. They are continuing to build and build massively, in my opinion, and gearing up for more crypto adoption in the future. Now, if I give you guys a few projects that have launched that I wanted to just shout out for the Base blockchain, this is not sponsored whatsoever. I'm looking every day at new projects, and I wanted to highlight a few of these. So first and foremost, we have Backroom, which is the ICM incubator on Base. ICM stands for Internet Capital Markets. And this, what we've just talked about for the first, 10 minutes of this video, is all about internet capital markets, because they're trying to bring traditional finance and break all these barriers that no one can seem to get through as a retail investor on chain, so that capital markets are accessible to everyone. That is what ICM stands for. There's a bunch of projects on Base in that narrative, and there's also a bunch of projects on Solana in that narrative. Of course, we're only looking at Base right now, but don't forget about Solana as well. But going back to Backroom here, you have Backroom is building the platform where on-chain capital is formed, accelerating internet capital markets. So it's going to be an incubator for this. It's powered by Aerodrome Finance, meaning that liquidity is going to get funneled through Aerodrome as projects launch through Backroom. And if we take a look at what has happened to the price of Backroom, well, it is relatively new. If you look at it, it started in June. In August, it went all the way up to about $20 million worth of market cap. During this announcement, it went from 1 million all the way to 8 million. And right now it's sitting at 4 million. So again, a very small project. Definitely do more research on it. It is in the Virtuals ecosystem, but this one here I wanted to highlight because I do think it has a lot of potential in this ICM narrative. Now, another one, if we switch gears completely and we talk about neobanks or settlements or, projects that are helping with artificial intelligence and moving money around quite easily. We have this project here, Wire or 717 AI by Virtuals. And this one here, despite the markets not doing too well, over, let's say, the month of October, if we really look at, October 1st, which is right over here, the price has gone up roughly 112%. It's now sitting at $10.8 million. Of course, smaller project, don't invest all your life savings in this because there are risks with small projects. But again, I wanted to showcase this one. And if you do more research on it, you're going to see how this Wire token actually gets involved. It is quite interesting. First and foremost, I would suggest to go into this and do more research, but it was deployed to enhance OTC settlement. OTC is over the counter. So trades that are not happening through traditional markets where there is a buyer and seller and there's a liquidity pool, these are over the counter trades. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all of this description, but what you need to know is that over the last year in 2024, they settled over $185 million in total volume. This is, quite interesting because what they do is with that volume, they generate fees. The fees that they actually make do go back to buy the wire token, and that is one of the models that they have. And in 2024, having settled $185 million in total volume is still quite significant. I can only imagine them continuing to grow out their business, settle even more volume, do even more buybacks of their token, and that could push the price of wire upwards. Now, of course, speculation here. Do your research on it. If you have any questions or if you want me to go deeper into it, let me know down in the description below. Now, project number 3 that I want to quickly touch about, we are talking about artificial intelligence, but verifying artificial intelligence, which is quite interesting. And that project is MEXC. It's sitting around $22 million worth of market cap, but over the day today, it actually pumped all the way up to roughly 32 million, down from 20 million. So there was a very big candle here where a lot of people were assumingly buying this project. Its high is around 46 million, but this one here is verifying artificial intelligence and making sure that the data out there is legitimate and verified by their artificial intelligence. And this is quite interesting because if you go a little bit deeper as to who's behind this project, it's a part of AISeer, which is also building Fact City AI, and that is actually backed by Draper VC, which is associated with Tim Draper, who is in fact a billionaire. So there is a lot of backing surrounding what MEXC is building. Again, at $22 million worth of market cap, I do think it is worth looking at. Not financial advice, but if you compare it to other models that are backed by hundreds of millions of dollars, we can actually see that City is doing much better in terms of accuracy compared to Perplexity AI, Bing Copilot, and ChatGPT 4, as well as Originality AI. All those are not as accurate as MEXC, which kind of goes to show that, there is quite a bit of legitimacy behind this project. So keep an eye out on this one. And the last one I wanted to talk about is actually a privacy token on Base, which again goes back to my initial thesis of following Brian Armstrong on Twitter. If you look at this one here, Ironfish, I'm sure none of you have heard of it, but Coinbase actually acquired this back in March of 2025 to, build privacy layer for crypto assets. And Brian Armstrong, if you go to his Twitter, he actually tweeted this, not too long ago. He says, Base is building private transactions. We acquired Ironfish team back in March of 2025. And if you take a look at the price of that token when this was said by Brian Armstrong, again, goes back to, the whole thing about being quick if you want to. If you look at what happened here, it went from $17 million worth of market cap all the way to $58 million worth of market cap. In terms of, percentage gain, that is roughly 230% in the span of a few hours or, not even an hour. So very, very fast moving. Of course, there's not a whole lot of liquidity here, so you have to be careful with what you're investing in. But again, it goes to show that, there are a lot of things happening on Coinbase that you have to keep your eyes peeled for. Now, if you've made it up to this point, you guys are absolute legends. Make sure you hit the like button, and I'm going to give you guys a little sneak peek as to how you could stay up to date with what Coinbase is doing. It's super simple. Go on to cryptorank.io, go to the search bar here, type in Coinbase Ventures, and you're going to be able to see exactly what these guys are investing in. As we can see, over the last day, they purchased Echo for $375 million. 2 days ago, they put 10 million in Limitless, which is, again, predictions markets. 15 million into Daylight 6 days ago. Not too sure about this one. And 8 days ago, they actually invested in No Ice, which is one of the projects that we've been talking about for the creator coin ecosystem. It's handling, microtransactions. And we can see that Coinbase Ventures did, in fact, invest in them. And again, nobody is really talking about this. And if you look at the price of noise, well, you can see that, it's still holding up quite well despite the markets. We can see that, let's say from October 1st, we were right around here at, $21 million worth of market cap. There was a bit of a dip on that whole liquidation event on October 10th, but we're relatively in the same range for this project, despite the markets practically all being down for altcoins. And again, Coinbase just invested in this, so keep it on your watch list. But with that being said, I'm going to stop here. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button. Thank you guys for the support. If you want to see what I'm doing with my money, have a look. The first link in the description below is our private community. And with that said, I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.